It's a Happy Families podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson. We're Luke and Susie, parents of 3 little boys, and this is the podcast for those of us who are time-poor parents who just want answers now.
Do you do any organised sport?
I used to ride competitively, but I don't anymore.
But like squash, team sports, anything like that?
No, not anymore, no. In fact, I'm kind of a little bit, as I've gotten older, I've become a little bit anti-competition. And I can explain why shortly. But you know, last time we had a chat, I asked you a joke about a shoe factory.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know
I
don't know if I should start a tradition or not, but I kind of feel like, you know, when you hear a great dad joke and you go home that night and you tell everyone and everyone goes, oh, but everyone loves it.
You love it, yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking. Luke's unhappy. What do you call it?
I never win in my unhappiness of dad jokes. Susie always gets
What do you call a dog with no legs?
I don't know.
Doesn't matter. He won't come anyway.
Let's get to the question.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
My son, he's 8 years old and he doesn't like sport at all. I'm worried he's going to get left out and ostracised as he gets older because boys still bond so much over sport. Should I make him continue with one?
Short answer, no. No.
Thanks so much, Dr. Justin Coulson, for joining us.
I feel like every time I talk with Susie now, there's just this...
There's a bit of angst there.
Yeah. I'm
She's
starting
giving you some attitude.
Okay, so...
Might be time for a new therapist, Susie.
No, I agree with your answer on this one. So let's explore this a little bit. So a child doesn't like sport. They're not interested in it. They don't want to do it. We do often sort of force them to early in their youth, put them into sport games, teams games, because we're told as parents that that's how we build the concept of team.
Okay, so there's 2 different directions that we need to take this conversation. The first is let's talk about competition generally and sport even more generally, and then let's talk about finding passions, strengths and spark. Okay? So when it comes to competition, one of the things that I was most fascinated by when I was writing my book, 9 Ways to a Resilient Child, I began to uncover all of these myths, things that people think will build their children's resilience but actually don't. And one of the biggest myths out there is that competition is good for resilience. The research tells us unequivocally it's lousy.
Wow.
It's terrible. For the losers, it makes them feel like they're worthless and incompetent and, you know, no good. And for the winners, what happens if they win consistently is that they begin to identify as a winner, which means that every time they go out to play, their identity is on the line. And if they lose, what does that actually say about me? I mustn't be a winner. I must be a loser.
Yeah.
Oh, look, Nick Kyrgios might be the best example of this in Australian sport right now. We've got this guy whose identity is so tied up with winning, and when he's not winning, my goodness, he's just uncivil, I think is probably the most polite way to say it. So competition, and there's a whole lot of research that we won't have time to go into right now. Competition is a problem generally. Now, in terms of sport, sport's great. Kids being active and outside is wonderful. But as soon as we start to say, I can only feel good about myself if I make somebody feel bad about themselves, that is, I can only feel good about me if I win, and therefore
lose.
you... I mean, it's a zero-sum game, most sport. Unless we're building relationships and we're building a level of competence and mastery, we're not going to get good outcomes from forcing the kids into sport. We want the kids to find some kind of physical activity that's outside, that's good for them and that builds relationships and competence, but it doesn't have to be sport and it doesn't have to be competitive. What matters is that they're outside and active, that they're healthy. Yeah. That is what builds resilience, and that is what builds a balanced, happy, healthy life.
Yeah, within this question, there's a very specific focus on later on in life, the bond and the ostracised, or can he share a bond with other boys?
So I just came across a story around Father's Day. There was an ad that was released on the internet for a beer company. And the story was about a young boy, aged 6. His name was, I hope I pronounced it correctly, Daniel Gordiello. And Daniel said to his dad, just a typical Aussie battler, Dad, I'm not enjoying sport at all. I want to take ballet classes. Now, that's kind of stepping in a really different direction. And that would probably be a little bit provocative for many families to hear that from their 6-year-old son. I would guess that it would be less provocative today than it was 20 years ago when this happened for this person. Actually, it was probably about 30 or 40 years ago.
But still, But still.
It's still a big deal. But the dad actually said yes. And what ended up happening with this 6-year-old boy is that he rose through the ranks and became principal at the Australian Ballet.
What? That's amazing.
There are people out there who will love whatever it is that your son loves. And if he doesn't want to play sport, that's fine. He might fall in love with ballet, or he could fall in love with chess, or maybe he just wants to do Lego and become an engineer. Maybe he's going to end up at NASA for all. Our job as parents is not to say this is what I was and therefore this is what you'll become. You know, Dr. Justin Coulson was a competitive swimmer and likes cycling, so therefore his children should do that. No. What our job is to say, what lights you up? What is it inside you that brings you alive? If we can tap into that when our children are 6 or 16, it doesn't matter. Our job is to find it and then let that spark. I mean, if you light a fire on a candle, puff of wind blows it out.
Yeah.
If you light a flame in a forest, puff of wind ignites it. I think that what we need to do is look at our children as sparks. Put them in the forest and wish for the wind.
Yeah. You've sat here in the studio and you've talked to us about the fact that our children need community. They need people.
They do.
And so this is what you're saying. You're saying, yeah, your son, 8 years old, needs people and needs to belong. It just may not be sport where he finds them.
Right. And Australia is just so sports-centric.
Yes.
And that's where it gets really tricky for this parent and his or her desire for 8-year-old boy to be involved in a sporting pursuit, and there will be social cliques and there will be challenges without question. I don't particularly care for footy, and people still think I'm a bit weird for that because I want to stay up in the middle of the night and watch European cycling with men with waxed or shaved legs. But you know what? I've found my tribe, and there are people who like cycling and they do the same thing as me, and we get to have fun together. There will be somebody out there who's into what he's into.
Dr. Justin Coulson, thank you so much. I think it was a wonderful answer, and it'll be really reassuring for this parent. Thanks for answering it.
Great to talk.
For more information on all of Justin's books, podcasts and programs, you can go online to happyfamilies.com.au, and to find out how to have Justin come and speak at your school, organisation or event, go to justincoulson.com.